Good afternoon, singles. It's a beautiful Sunday afternoon. It is almost Thanksgiving. I just got back from a trip to Colorado to visit our Colorado Apexers. It was just a wonderful trip. Got to see some beautiful scenery, meet some incredible people. So exciting to see what God is doing around the country with Apex, and just continues to bless us in so many ways. So today on Sunday Singles Shorts, I wanted to talk briefly about intentions. I think is the best way to put it. A lot of times, you as a Christian and as a Christian single, you have the best of intentions. You wake up in the morning and you think, well, I'm going to do this today for my church. I'm going to do this today for my friends. I'm going to do this today for my family. I'm going to do this today for ministry. I'm going to do this for a volunteer opportunity. The problem with that, the problem with intentions, is that we have an enemy. We have an enemy that's out there. If you in the morning, if you wake up and you say, I'm going to do this for God today, the devil, believe it or not, immediately has a plan to stop you from doing that. You hear so much singles will say, well, I was planning on being there, but this happened and that happened and I just didn't make it. I was going to be there at our breakfast ministry, but I overslept somehow. That never happens. Those things don't happen by accident. The enemy is determined. If you're going to do something for God, he is going to do his best to stop you from doing that. So what do we do? When I played football, I was a quarterback, and always when we would come, the offense would come up to the line, we would always look and see what the defense was doing. What is the defense laying out in front of us? How are they preparing to defend what we are about to do? And then a lot of times we would adjust our offense based on what we saw the defense doing. And that way, once we saw what the defenders were doing to try to stop us, we had a plan to go back against them to achieve our goals. So we're going to touch on that in a second, on how do we do that. But let's talk about what it says in the Bible about what Satan is up to. And the first verse we're looking at here is 1 Peter 5:8. Many of you have heard this verse before. But 1 Peter 5:8 says, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. So you think of, there's a couple things in that verse that I think we need to look at. We need to be sober. We need to be at peace, and we need to not have anything distracting us. We need to be vigilant. When you have set a goal to do something for God, don't let anything stop you. Be vigilant in what you're trying to do for God. And your adversary, the devil, walks about like a roaring lion. Have you ever heard a lion roar? Very disturbing, and it's very scary. So the devil is standing back and he's roaring to see who he can startle, who he can scare off of his game, who he can, a lot of times when predators are approaching the pack, they will roar, they will scream, and they see who they can separate from the pack, because they know that the prey that they can separate from the pack is the most vulnerable. And that's why Christian fellowship is so important to us, about our fellowship in our church, our fellowship in our ministry, is that we're stronger together. We are here for each other, and we protect each other, we watch each other. But if the devil can separate us, he can really go to work on us. And he can look and see, and he can devour us spiritually. So very important, that verse, that we're at peace, we're determined, and that we know the devil's trying to scare us and startle us, and he's trying to separate us. from those that would be from our Christian friends and our family, the ones that would surround us and protect us. Also, if you look at Job 1:7, I've always thought this was interesting. And Satan is before the Lord in Job 1:7, and the Lord said to Satan, "From where do you come?" So Satan answered the Lord and said, "From going to and fro on the earth, and from walking back and forth on it." So Satan is constantly, he's going to and fro on the earth. He's walking around on the earth. He's looking for what he can mess up in our lives, what objectives we can have that he can keep us from. He's the Nick Saban, and I'm not saying that Satan is Nick Saban, but he's the Nick Saban of spiritual warfare. He's making the best defense he can build against you to keep you from meeting your spiritual objectives. So what do we do? So we have to know that the enemy is out there and he's trying to prohibit us from doing what we want to do spiritually. We have to be prepared for that, like 1 Peter said. We have to speak, I think, every day into our own lives, the whole armor of God. If you've never read those verses, look those verses up about the armor of God. Put on the armor of God every day. A soldier never went out from his tent without his armor, because he never knew when he was going to be under attack. And it's the same for us spiritually. We do not know when the enemy is going to attack us and come after us. And how do you know what you're going through? How do you know if that's God trying to tell you something or it's Satan attacking you? And I'm going to throw a little graphic up in a second that will help you understand how you can tell the difference when Satan's trying to do something to you or when God is trying to tell you something. It's very, very, once you read this, it becomes very clear what is what in that scenario. But we just have to be very cognizant, singles. We have to be very cognizant that if you have something wholesome, if you have something that you're wanting to achieve for God today, your enemy's planning a defense against it. And many times, if I knew I had an early meeting at work, or for Apex, or I had an early meeting with one of our ministry leaders, I'll prepare my clothes the night before. I try to think of everything that would keep me from being on time, from making that meeting. We just have to think. We have to think ahead, and we have to be prepared that the enemy. We have to know that the enemy is out there. He's walking to and fro, and he's seeing who he can devour. We also, and going back to that graphic, in Mark 8:33, this is Jesus. But when he turned around and looked at his disciples, he rebuked Peter, saying, "Get behind me, Satan." Sure, Peter felt good when Jesus addressed him that way. "For you are not mindful of the things of God, but the things of men." We have to be careful, too, that we are mindful of what God is wanting to do in our lives. A lot of times we get caught up in the day-to-day with the things of men, and we get distracted from the things of God. I hear singles all the time tell me, well, I need to do this because this is important. And I listen to it, and it rings kind of hollow, because that's a thing of men. It's not a thing of God. And that's very temporary, whereas a thing for God is eternal. So we have to be mindful of the things of God all the time. Is this what God has for me today? Or is this just something that men have for me today? So we always got to be about the Father's business. And we've got to be cognizant with it. When we are doing something for God, the enemy's determined to stop us. He's building a defense against our efforts. And we've got to figure out by the verse of 1 Peter 5:8, how do we attack that, and how do we score? How do we get around that defense and achieve what God has for us? Well, that will wrap us up today on Sunday Single Shorts. Everyone have a wonderful Thanksgiving out there, and we will see you soon. Thanks so much. Be blessed. Love you all. Thank you.